Are you arachnophobic, dear?
No, but you are.
Yes, I am. I don't like spiders. I am not good with them.
No, you're not.
I'm fine with these ones, though, even though it's an entire planet of the spiders.
Well, dates might be because they don't really look like spiders. They're just kind of.
Oh, they look like spiders.
They look like a Party City like pipe cleaner mess.
It's that they don't move like spiders, because that's my problem. My problem with spiders is the way that they move and how fast they move, and these don't move like spiders because that's too hard to animate. Well, puppet animate they were doing. But Planet of the Spiders, the season finale of season 11. What happens in the episode, dear?
Spiders.
Yeah.
But first and foremost, we see a man walking through the woods. It's Yates. He's out of uniform because he got fired. Remember, the doctor and the brigadier are watching a show, and Yates is now in a house. People are chanting in this house. They're very Buddhist. With all the chanting, this fucking mandala map-looking thing on the ground lights up, and Yates runs away, knocking over a candle. But then there's a mind reader professor that the doctor came to talk to. And the Alm brothers decide to leave, but know that it's Yates, so they're like, But the doctor invites the dude over, and that's psychic, and dude's, I want to know about ESP, and he's like, but I'm a fake, and they're all like, actually, you're not a fake, you're extremely powerful, and he's like, fuck. And then he lifts a plate across the room, and it's also hard, and he drops it. Also, everyone apparently technically has ESP. Another Buddhist is talking to some dude about things, and he seems rich and shit. And then someone's coming. So Yates went and got Sarah, and they drive off from the train to go to this Buddhist area. And then another person named Tommy that no one likes, and he has a learning disability, I think is what we called it. And we'll get to it.
We'll talk about it after. Just say it's a learning disability, and we'll talk about it in the episode break.
Yates thinks the Buddhists are up to something, and they almost crash into a tractor, but it wasn't there. And then the doctor's running tests on ESP dude, and Briggs like, please don't listen to this story about me fucking some chick. And then they make his thoughts into pictures and recall everything that happened that one time with the doctor. And then Yates and Sarah are listening to Buddhist rhetoric, and also, yes, these powers could be used for evil. Then Benton comes in and goes, hi, here's a package. It's addressed to literally anyone. Here, it's from South America, from Joe. Apparently, it's Joe? Sapphire from Metabilis that she sent back, which was her wedding present because they thought it was evil. And Yates is now showing Sarah around the meditation room, and they're like, wow, this is boring, and they leave. And then when they headed to hide in the basement, the rich group of men confront them, and Yates is like, let's leave. And then apparently the main rich dude is named Lupton, and he knew she was coming for some reason, and that's why he sent the tractor after driving off. Yates parks behind the building somewhere so they could secretly walk back to the house. Then Tommy sees them sneak in the window, and he wants to play games with them. And she's like, here, have my shiny pin on my jacket, go to the base and go away. And so they go to the basement. And then it's time for the chanting to start again while their paper lights up. And the professor is staring into the crystal that Josh sent and doing some shit. And he's like fucking up everything. And then when we take the crystal back, he dies. So that sucks. Like, actually dies. Mm-hmm. And then we see after all the chanting is done that a spider appeared. And then that's that.
And then everyone's dead.
Mm-hmm.
So, Planet of the Spiders, directed by Barry Letts, produced by Barry Letts, written technically by Barry Letts, but mainly written by Robert Sloman. Okay, so this episode initially started out, Robert Sloman was writing an episode called The Final Game that was intended to be the last story for The Master, because basically after the last Master story, Roger DeGaldo was like, listen, I'm only doing one more of these and then I'm done, because remember, he was having troubles getting work because everyone just assumed he would be busy working on Doctor Who, so they wouldn't, like, you know, go for him. They wouldn't, like, think of him for roles. he was like, no, I'm always free. Like, Doctor Who is, like, it takes up 2 weeks. Like, it's nothing. Like, please stop assuming I'm always working on Doctor Who.
That's a boot.
Then, unfortunately, Roger DeGaldo had his fatal car crash. So that episode got shelved. The main gist of the episode was that they wanted to explore the relationship more between the Doctor and the Master. And it was meant to be initially, and this is non-canon, but it would have been interesting. I mean, it still kind of follows through in a sense of the idea was that the two Time Lords would be revealed as parts of the same persona in a way. The Master was the id, and the Doctor was the ego. It was meant to be. It was meant to be more implied through metaphor rather than like we're the same person, split, sort of, split personality. Like you're the id, I'm the ego of this one person. Like it was more like their type of relationship, like their personas led to that type of relationship. And it was meant to lead to a Reichenbach Falls style mutually destructive act at the end, in which the Master would finally see the error of his ways and sacrifice his life to save the Doctor and the universe. The sadder and wiser Doctor would move to a more significant step closer to spiritual awakening, although with a long way to go. A lot of this comes into other plays, but it's kind of puts back into the focus and really emphasizes the fact that this was made in the 70s. These stories were written in the 70s where spiritualism is on the rise once again. That makes it sound ominous. It's not meant to be. You have a lot of Western people looking into things like Buddhism and going off and hippie type things, but being more spiritually curious within, looking elsewhere other than the standard Christianity that they're accustomed to in their country, for most of them. For others, it's not just all Christians, atheists, people from other religions, creeds, and doctrines as well. But it is sort of like a lot of white people had fascination with Buddhism.
I mean, why do you think we still have a fascination with yoga and so on and so forth?
There's the whole thing of like white people are still fascinated with it. So an easy way. What was it on the Prashant's? I forget his name. Prashant something on that Bill Nye Netflix special where he's like, it's the oldest trick in the book to make what you're doing as an ethnic person seem mystical to a white person, and to get money off them is to slap a Buddha on it, and chant some words and put some incense on.
Of course,
it's a great little bit. But yeah, it is that sort of thing of white people are pretty fascinated with Buddhism because Buddhism is kind of a obvious thing you can point to of this is not Western thinking, quote unquote Western thinking. Like this is a completely different like school of thought of like a view of the world and of life and everything. It's fascinating in and of itself. Like I'm fascinated by Buddhism. I'm not like the type of person to put Buddhas and symbols of Buddhism around my house because I'm not Buddhist. I just find the concept really of religious Buddhism fascinating. The first place. Yes, I'm not religious in the first place. Instead, I put images of anime characters around my house.
The true gods.
The true gods. Yusuke from Persona 5. So back in the real world, though, when this episode was made, Planet of the Spiders, because again, unfortunately, Roger DeGaldo died, so the original episode was shelved. Robert Sloman came back to write this story, which Barry Letts had more or less written like the plot stage of it, of like where he wanted it to go and what he wanted it to be about. So Sloman got sole credit for it because, again, the BBC would only let... BBC rules meant Barry Letts could only be director or producer or writer. Writer he could maybe get away with if he did one per year, but he'd already done one. So that he was like, okay, Robert Sloman gets it. I'll just do a basic treatment. And then, so that's why we have this sort of Buddhist overtones that are very overt in this episode. Because as we've discussed previously, Barry Letts was absolutely fascinated by Buddhism and spiritualism as a whole. And so he wanted to reflect that. And there's no way of getting around it. I kind of have to spoil the point of the episode to talk about it, because we need to talk about this in the beginning. The fact that this is a regeneration episode, the Doctor does regenerate, and so they wanted... so of course Barry Letts, you think about it, like you go, okay, how would Barry Letts do a regeneration episode? And it's like, well, considering his fascination with Buddhism and spiritualism,
would like do that.
Exactly. It's the kind of thing of like, everything I've told all of you about Barry Letts so far, it's like, okay, now he's doing a regeneration episode. You're gonna most likely go, it's got something to do with Buddhism or incredibly influenced by it. And yep, it is. Which leads to characters, which we'll talk about in the next one, being in this episode, who are portrayed in certain ways and by certain actors. But there's also this character of Tommy, who in the episode is portrayed as having a learning disability of sorts. He is... there are kind ways that the wiki refers to him, but to be completely honest, I don't know if it's kind of an offensive way to talk about him the way that the wiki does. I mean, it's not a slur, obviously, but you know, that sort of thing. But it is an intellectual disability that he has, a learning disability, where he is portrayed as not knowledgeable, unable to retain knowledge, unable to learn things. Sort of a childlike wonder and level of intelligence about the world, which in the beginning is not terrible. It's not good, but it's not terrible. It's not as bad as, you know, some depictions have been. It missteps in some serious ways, like what Sarah says. But we're going to talk about his character really quickly and spoil what happens with his character, because I need to talk about it now because it's kind of unavoidable. He's kind of integral to the plot in a way, because the entire point of this story is they view regeneration as a going to the next stage of life, sort of letting go, and in order to regenerate in this one, the Doctor needs to let go of his greed, the things that are holding him back in his life. And so you have this reflected in other characters. You have the Doctor coming to terms with, he's been described as the ego and letting go of his greed in order to regenerate. You have it's kind of overtly stated that Mike Yates, the thing that's keeping him alive and saves him from dying in the end, is this notion of his compassion. The other thing as well is Tommy it's believed that he has this innocence about him. This innocence, which they kind of... they're not saying his innocence is his intellectual disability, but it's more because of his intellectual disability, he has this innocence about him. He is an uncorrupted human, untainted by the world. He is unaware of the world because he's struggled to perceive it. And mainly, the episode kind of unintentionally says as well, and proves the fact that it's not just him that's been unable to perceive the world, it's that the world's been unwilling to accommodate for him in any sort of sense. Like, he lives in his bedroom is in a cupboard under the stairs. Anytime he speaks to characters in this, they always write him off. They don't really pay attention to him. They're kind to him. They have some patience for him, but they don't have patience for him as a person. They don't think of him as a person. They think of him as an object in the way. And so his innocence is what saves him in the end, because he has this strong sense of what's right and wrong based on what he knows. And halfway through the episode, he, through magic, let's just say for now, his mental capacity expands, and he starts. The way they actually do it is actually kind of charming in a way of like they don't. It's not offensive in like the best part is he's by himself for the entire thing. There's no other characters like guiding him through it. It's him exploring the world again on his own, with the ability to have his mind expanded because of this magic, essentially. So there's a scene of him going through a library, reading all of these books, reading this poetry, and he's able to actually read it, because before he was struggling to learn how to read still because his mother was teaching him, apparently. But again, considering the way everyone else treats him in the story, it's kind of implied that his mother is not has patience for him, but not as much patience to accommodate for him and his intellectual disability. So he's reading these books and he's appreciating this poetry and everything. And because the main thing is he has a limited vocabulary. So when he sees things he likes, he calls them pretty. But there's a really sweet moment where he's reading this book and he's reading this poetry and he just says, "That's pretty." And he says, "No, it's beautiful." So he's sort of, his mind is growing as he's going through this, and he's realizing that he's had this sort of, this disability his whole life. And that's when the episode stops being good about Tommy, and they kind of just drop it all, and we get some, not absolutely terrible things, but the one time a character acknowledges that Tommy has gone through this sort of metamorphosis is Sarah. She goes, "Whoa, Tommy, you're cured.
You're normal now.
You're normal now." And it's like, that's no, that's not, no.
Yeah, no, that's not how that works.
Because, and here's the thing, if you don't understand, it implies that having an intellectual disability or something like that is abnormal to an extent of there is something wrong with you that needs to be fixed. And the thing is, that's not how it works, and that's not how people work. That's probably the most offensive thing that happens to his character, but the writer himself, Robert Sloman, down the track, he regretted it completely. He sort of says, with all the things he included, especially the Buddhist thought sort of overarching the entire episode, and, you know, the doctor breaking into Tibetan and talking, he later admitted to regretting the patronizing way Tommy had been treated in his script, and found the scene where he's, quote, cured of both learning difficulties and a West Country accent, which, if you notice, his accent does kind of change. It's not an intentional thing, it's an unintentional thing, because Sergeant Benton's actor was actually helping him learn how to act, because the actor who played Tommy, this was like his first role, second or so role, so he actually hadn't had much experience acting. But yeah, the writer, on reflection of the episode, he's like, this is deeply uncomfortable to like watch and look back at. Which, yes, it is. It is incredibly uncomfortable to look back at and experience. So, it's not the worst thing in this episode, or in Doctor Who as a whole, but it is important to talk about it. We'll talk about the other elephant in the room in the next episode break. Well, we'll give it a bit of a breather. What happens in episode 2, dear?
Well, the spider talks and says, "Would you like some power? Let me bite your ass," and instead just jumps on his back. And then the testing machine apparently recorded the dead professor's thoughts, and they were all spiders. So there's that. And then Sarah goes off to tell the doctor what the fuck happened, and Yates just wants to talk to the abbot instead. by the way, the spider is still on the dude's back and he's invisible and their minds are merged, and the spider really wants the crystal back that the doctor stole. And the brig gets upset about the spiders they saw and don't understand. Meanwhile, the doctor looked in the crystal and only saw his old teacher. The Tommy nearly beats up Yates before asking for Yates's necklace as a distraction and walks away. Sarah gets back, tells him, and he doesn't care until she says the word spider, and he's like, what were you saying? I wasn't listening. And Loopy goes to find the doctor and talk to him, and mentally electrocute somebody. And then the crystal apparently can affect the mind and shit and make you think strong, and then the spiders want it back. But there were no spiders when the doctor was there. Lipton sneaks and sees the crystal and talks to the spider for a bit, and then the crystal just teleports away. And the doctor and Sarah go, oh fuck, and then chase him down to try to get it back. And the brig tries to shoot him, but he steals the doctor's fucking weird car, so they take Bessie instead. Doctor gets in a one-man plane for some reason to follow the car. There's a long-ass chase that takes up fucking 90% of this goddamn episode, including, like, a cop and a boat and shit. And it's a lot. And a hydrofoil. And then basically they're in boats and a hydrofoil, and the doctor jumps into his boat, and he's not there anymore. That's weird. It's pretty much the whole episode. There's nothing else about it.
Yeah, it's a really quick episode, and there's kind of a reason why the chase scene lasts as long as it does. To put it bluntly, Robert Sloman didn't really know how to write it, and it was kind of more Barry Letts being like, okay, write this, and he's like, how do I fit this chase scene into this whole, like, message and, like, underlying, like, point of Buddhist theory and Buddhist doctrine that you're wanting me to do with this script? Like, how the fuck does a car chase fit into this, Barry? To which the response was, just do it. So he just wrote the chase. He basically just sort of went, like, Barry's chase scene, insert it here. Which is why the chase scene is basically just written down as insert 10-minute chase scene here. Another fun little fact for you, dear. The walking spider puppet that they have, it's called Boris. Okay. They called the spider Boris. The reason why they gave it a name was because they actually appeared, the puppeteer and appeared with it on many children's programs to give tips to young model makers, etc., and also to reassure people that it was actually a model and not real. Because, okay, on DVD and Blu-ray, it looks incredibly fake, but gotta remember, 70s quality TV and the size of the TV, it would have looked pretty real to children. So they had to reassure people that it actually was fake and not a real spider. Especially with Elizabeth Sladen, who was not good with spiders at all. John Pertwee took steps to make her get on with the job by, like, showing her the workings of the puppet and making her touch each of the model spiders to, like, try and put it in her mind of, like, this is not a real spider, this is not a real spider, this is not a real spider. That sort of thing. They were made in-house but operated by people outside the BBC. The puppeteers who did this also did puppets for Barry Letts' future production of Pinocchio, which supposedly outraged parents, apparently, because it stuck to the book and was not Disney. It wasn't the Disney Pinocchio, it was the book Pinocchio, which upset parents because the book Pinocchio is a lot more violent. Among other things, yeah.
I mean, most fairy tales, the original books are fucking
true.
Lot.
But yeah, what happens in the next episode, dear?
More spiders, mostly. Anyway, Lupton made it back home, and Tommy saw it, and also the sapphire, and he's like, I want that. And the Council of Spiders need to bring the crystal back to the planet. They also want to conquest Earth. It's their rightful home or some shit. Luppy tries to run away, and the spider puts him to sleep and teleports away. The doctor and crew try to tell Luppy on the Abbot. He doesn't believe him, and now Luppy is asked to stop doing their shit. And he's like, no, I want to be promoted at my job. It's sales. Meanwhile, Tommy reaches to get the crystal from the window and steals it and puts it in a box of shiny things. And the spider now can fully control Luppy, but also he can control it back, because haha, bitch. So let's split the power. Let's get the crystal. Wait, it's gone. Tommy goes to Sarah and goes, look, I have a present for you. Come with me. And she's like, all right, I guess. And Luppy's upset the crystal's gone. Spider will kill them if they figure out they lost it, so time to bluff. Tommy, of course, lives under the stairs. Sarah gets to eavesdrop on Luppy and them. He tries to come back and give her the crystal, and she's like, shut up, go find Yates, bye. And then he gets to the doctor and tells them they're in the cellar before Sarah sees Luppy disappear into the cellar. Sarah, having stood on the mandala, I said Mandalay because they said it weird, is now on Metabilis for a bit. The doctor's... Yes.
She's standing on India!
Yeah. The doctor is gonna take the TARDIS to go there. There's a whole bunch of retro cavemen here, like in 70s ass jackets, and shit, with like fur on the inside. And they're like, let's kill the fuck out of her. Then they are stopped.
Wait, why did I say India? It's not India.
Yeah,
Sorry.
It's fine. A horn starts to sound, and then they're like, okay, hide, we don't want to die. It's the Spider Queen, followed by her fanny pack army. And he's like, dude, your guard struck my guard, so he's gotta die. But then this old man comes up, and he's like, no, I'll do it. Yeah, I'll do it in his place. And then they see Sarah being a fucking idiot and looking through the door, so she walks outside to protect the villagers instead. And then the doctor shows up and is very respectful to the spider lady. But then they want to take him for questioning, and he has a fight. While Sarah, quote-unquote, escapes / hides. She just kind of puts a scarf on, honestly. And then the doctor is shot dead, probably. That's it.
Yeah, the doctor's dead now. And it's only 3-episode story. That's it. He doesn't regenerate. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Choji. Jesus fuck. Okay. I've mentioned in the past that Doctor Who has a complicated relationship with the way it depicts racial minorities and other ethnicities.
Mm-hmm.
We've already discussed the sort of we've sort of discussed the sort of aspect of a black man in, say, the Tomb of the Cyberman, where the character there is a good character, but the problem is there's the unfortunate fact that the character is kind of mute and is, for all intensive purposes, like a servant character, and is the muscle. Sort of playing into stereotypes still, even though it's not an intentional... Well, it's... The problem is, because it was the 60s, the fact that it wasn't an intentional sort of racist depiction doesn't mean shit, because it needs to intentionally not be a racist depiction, especially back then, for it to not be, oof, yikes, that ain't it, chief. The weird thing that always gets me is that in Doctor Who, in earlier seasons in the 70s, we had episodes that featured Chinese characters and Asian characters in general that were played by actual Asian actors, and that was mainly due to, remember, the director saying, I don't want yellowface in this episode, not because it's racist, but because, it looked awful. You couldn't ever believe that it was an actual Asian person under there. It was always, it's very obviously a white person under a lot of makeup doing an accent.
No.
Unfortunately, there are two specific depictions that come to mind that we're going to run into, that we're going to need to talk about Doctor Who's relationship with specifically Asian characters. The first one is this one. The second one we'll probably talk about in about half a year or so. But this one especially is bad because Choji, the character, is played by a white man, an Australian, in fact. And he has a small amount of makeup applied to him to make him look more Tibetan. He doesn't have his eyes taped back or anything. It is purely just coloring his skin. Not that that's me saying, like, it's not that bad, but I'm trying to tell you what it specifically is that they did. Yes, they make up to darken his skin somewhat and color it more to make him appear more quote-unquote Tibetan. And he is putting on an accent. It's not a Mickey Rooney really, really, really overtly stereotypical accent, but it is the sort of subtle quote-unquote Asian accent that a lot of white people would put on and when they're doing a stereotype of an Asian person. It's uncomfortable once you notice it, because it's like, why? But it is that sort of thing of Doctor Who does not have a good relationship with race. Like, it was, to say it was a product of its times is not an excuse, because yeah, there were other places, other things doing the exact same. I mean, fucking Monty Python did the exact same thing.
Yep.
But it's more a indication of the fact that Doctor Who had a long way to go and it's not perfect, and they were incredibly progressive in certain areas, such as, you know, women's rights and the rights of workers. And I mean, that is all chalked up to having a communist on the writing staff for most of the time and having a lot of very left-leaning people in charge of production. But in regards to this, it's because it was mainly a predominantly white production, which says something.
Shocking.
When Doctor Who has historically had behind the scenes a fairly diverse cast for the 60s and 70s of television production. But yeah, they never had that full transition to, you know, a overtly progressive show, or even just, you know, not having yellowface, or not having when having non-white characters on the show, not, you know, stereotyping them. But that is an unfortunate fact of these episodes. You can't go back and change them. All you can do is point them out, critique them, not accept it, but sort of accept that you can't change what's already been there. And I mean, it's the sort of thing of,
it's accepting it and agreeing to accepting that you did it and being like, fuck, I fucked up, it's accepting that it's happened and fixing it and doing better.
It's that sort of accepting it. It's not the kind of, well, it just happened, so get over it. Because no, it is incredibly offensive. This isn't the most offensive one, though. The one that we're going to have to talk about, The Talons of Wang Chiang, is regarded as one of the best episodes of Doctor Who ever written, and I agree, but also it is deeply, deeply problematic. Outright racist in a lot of ways, to the point where when it was shown and sold overseas to Canada, they refused to buy it because of protests, and certain other countries as well refused to buy the episode and air it in their country because it was so deeply offensive. We'll get to that though in a few weeks. I'm off the top of my head around about 20 weeks or so. We'll get to that.
That is not a
That's
few.
going to be an interesting discussion. That is the only episode on streaming sites of Doctor Who that has a actual content warning on it. Which says something when there's like, you could have content warnings for some of the stuff in other episodes, but if like that's the only one with a content warning, it's a doozy. And it's hard to talk about because, again, it's one of the most highly regarded episodes by a lot of people. So, criticizing it and criticizing its relation with race tends to not make people happy. Anyway, speaking of making people happy, what happened in the next episode, dear?
Fuck off. That's not how you make me happy, and you know it.
I make you happy by getting to the end of the episode.
Yes.
And we're nearly at the end of the episode.
Yes. Seeing that Sarah ran away, they captured the doctor, take him with them. Everyone tells Sarah that the doctor is dead, and Sarah's like, no, wait, he's alive. All the rich men of Luppy's crew just want to run away and go to the police because Luppy's fucking crazy. Tommy is listening in on them, but then apparently was just trying to read her some shit. I don't know. And he leaves. And then the main queen comes in and goes, look, don't fucking fight me. I'm a spider. Don't be a treasonous bitch. Give me the crystal. Cave spider politics. Tommy is trying to read, but the crystal keeps making weird fucking noises and glowing. And then, he died. Wait, no, actually, he can read perfectly and speak perfectly now, and Sarah doesn't know what to do, but everyone really starts a fucking fight. The doctor won't wake up. And then there's a machine in the TARDIS that can help him. Please go get it. Sarah is found by Luppy, and one of the retro cavemen want to help her, and then out goes to pick up a brick to beat the shit out of him. But then there's this weird switch they find instead while Sarah's taken, and the cavemen are just like, what? And give it to the doctor, and then there's a noise and fire shoots out of his fingers before nothing else happens. And then Tommy is now having a reading marathon, and the Luppy crew are now beating the fuck out of Yates and kidnapping him. The doctor's also awake, Sarah's also awake and gonna be eaten. Retro cavemen are upset the doctor isn't doing anything, just eating soup. And then we get a bunch of backstory about settlers and how the spiders killed most of them for eating too much food. The doctor is testing pebbles to find a stone that can reflect the spider powers. And then Retro Grandpa and Sarah are trying to get out of the spider webs, and the doctor comes in to save her. And then Luppy also tries to get him fucking killed, but then is dragged off and taken to, and then the doctor's taken to Sarah's area, and she's just like, oh, you're here to save me, fuck. And then that's, yeah.
I thought you said Lumpy, and I was like, what's the fucking Wookiee from the Star Wars Holiday Special doing in this episode? Anyway. So, Roger DeGaldo, unfortunately, had passed away. As I was looking into the cast for this episode to, see who was who and see if... double check that I was right, that it was a white man playing Choji. Yes, it was. Yeah. When I read into it. One of the spider's voices was Roger DeGaldo's widow, Kismet DeGaldo. And I was like, oh, that's curious. And then I read about it and I was like, oh, that's incredibly depressing. So the life insurance for Roger DeGaldo was unfortunately a shambles because he died in an unlicensed taxi. His widow was left in terrible financial situation. John Pertwee and his wife had taken care of some of the problem for her to help out, but also Barry Letts wanted to help out more, so he actually arranged an actor's equity card for her, so she could play the role of one of the voices of the spiders, and so she would have some money coming in. While the legal holdups were still, happening. So that's why she's a spider in this, essentially. It's a way to help her out on her feet. Get back on her feet. Which, is nice. In better news, it's been alleged that Planet of the Spiders led to a nationwide outbreak of arachnophobia, but, the source on that is rather dubious, and it's kind of kind of more attributed to like the whole Christian pressure groups being like, TV is bad. See, it's my all these people are getting arachnophobia and are scared of spiders now because the TV made them scared of spiders, like that sort of thing. Although they did get letters from angry Buddhists. They had written letters which Barry Letts responded to rather condescendingly, which is kind of why this episode has a tongue-in-cheek name of Buddhism 101. Because it's the kind of thing of like, yeah, Barry Letts has an interest in Buddhism, but he himself does not come from a culture of Buddhism. He more adopted it himself, and it's like, okay, buddy, stop. So what happens in the next episode, dear?
Hold on. Wait, no. I almost read the last episode. The spiders know that the crystal's on Earth still, and also the queen is trying to be overthrown because of course, but she stops the shit for now. The spiders couldn't take the crystal before the doctor because they arrived later than the spiders, or than the doctor. And then too bad Sarah is going to be taken and eaten by the spiders now. And then the retro caveman is like, I gotta go fight and help. And then the doctor breaks free and goes to rescue Sarah, who's talking about a single spider who's her friend. And then she doesn't agree with the consul, and we should invade Earth, also maybe peace. And then they wanted to go get back the blue crystal in return for releasing everyone. Luppy's crew still has Yates tied the fuck up, but they want to try to talk to Luppy again, maybe using the mandala to do it. And Yates is like, you need 5 people, I'll help. And then they don't want to trust the queen or the spider or the humans, and they make Loopy have a headache. And then Tommy is having trouble with some words, but he's learning some fucking astrophysics or some shit. And then we go talk to Yates about what happened, but learns that shit is in the cellar. And then we have a full-on flashback and a remix of talking about the cellar. Oh. And then he decides to go talk to the abbot, who also hides the crystal. The doctor, having followed Sarah's screams, walks into an illusion of the Great One for no real reason. And he can't really see him, but the crystal is a perfect power, whatever. And they need it a whole lot, so instead she just makes the doctor walk around in circles. Meanwhile, Loopy Crew is doing the mandala circle thing, and spiders go to him, and Loopy is watching this the entire time. But the spiders are showing up, like, slightly to the left of them, so they can't be seen, and they're like, this isn't working! Tommy tells the abbot shit, and is not questioning anything, and just goes down to the cellar, and he's very upset with everyone, and then almost gets killed by a spider, as well as Yates. And then Tommy comes down to see the spiders attack, and that sucks. So Sarah plans to escape and takes the doctor's hand and poofs off somehow, while the retro caveman attack. And then Sarah apparently just got taught how to fucking teleport and runs into the TARDIS. And she's like, let's go. And then apparently the Loopy Crew has a whole bunch of spiders on their back now. TARDIS swoops in, they get attacked, Tommy gets attacked, but he's fine. Sarah words something fucking badly, and then they run away. That's when she's like, you're perfect and normal now. I'm sorry, my brain literally just wanted to throw up, and that's just how it came out.
I was about to say, it sounded like your brain just wanted to throw up then.
A little bit. Time to wake up the old Tibetan white man and talk to him. And at this point I was like, I'm assuming something, but that's a spoiler. And then the doctor admits that he stole a sapphire, and they don't really call it a sapphire during this, even though they called it that in the first fucking whatever. Tommy outside guards the door and the spiders from the crew, and he's apparently so fucking intimidating that they all just kind of back up and shoot lightning at him. Tommy also knows self-defense Krav Maga bullshit, but they electrocute him, and then that's it.
That's it.
Yeah. Listen, I'm still trying to figure out how I want to transfer from one episode to another part. Whatever. Fuck.
Oh, you're trying, and that's what matters. It's really hard. So, okay, episode 6 is really fucking weird in that it kind of starts about 5 or so minutes before episode 5 ended. That's because they initially were going to do more with the CSO, with the scene of the Doctor talking to giant spider. But it looked fucking awful and they had to cut the scenes. So they were like, we've got to re-edit this to look better. So they basically decided to instead edit in scenes from episode 5 again and try and make it cohesive and fit time-wise and make it a little bit more tense. It doesn't. It's more annoying when you're watching them back to back. It's like, I've already seen this. Like, come on, next bit, come on. Yeah, it's frustrating. Oh, that's a spoiler. We're not going to talk about that. So initially, when Clegg in the first episode, the clairvoyant dude who's dies, he holds up the sonic screwdriver and has images appear on the machine, the art machine. Originally, they were going to use footage from the Green Death where the Doctor uses his sonic screwdriver, but they decided to use the Drashigs from Carnivals and Monsters instead because they thought it'd be more scary. Which, I guess. Sorry, I just looked at one of the facts that are written in this list that I have, and one of them is just incidental music exists in part 2. It's like, yes, thank you. There is a similarity in Tommy's story to the supposedly the protagonist of the novel Flowers for Algernon.
Yeah, I remember
it is kind of a similar story. However, the protagonist of that story later, spoilers, suffers a regression of intelligence, whereas Tommy's intelligence is permanent and doesn't have any drawbacks whatsoever. It's kind of a because they have him read certain quotes from certain things that are a little bit more tongue in cheek about it all. But thankfully, this is one of the only episodes to feature giant spiders. Unfortunately, the next one that does feature spiders was made in 2018, 2019, and I don't like watching that one because they actually animated spiders. And it's not fun at all. But also apparently the spider that named Boris was named after the Who's song Boris the Spider. That's why it was called Boris, by the way. I forgot to mention that. Also, Robert Sloman himself was arachnophobic, not just Elizabeth Sladen. But yeah, that's a lot. What happens in the next episode? Part.
The crystal will be how they apparently are going to take over the universe. Also, the Abbott dude, not the Abbott, the up higher, whatever. He has it. Abbott. Yes. No, God. Tommy brought it. Sarah, fuck that guy.
Oh no,
Sarah's
Greg Abbott's
obviously
got the sapphire.
Fuck.
He's got a spider on his back, dear.
I wouldn't be surprised at this point.
Oh god.
Fuck. Sarah's obviously taken over by the Queen Spider and electrocutes the Doctor to work for free. They work to free Sarah using the crystal in a very awkward position, right by his dick, for some fucking reason. The Queen Spider gets fucking murdered while Tommy is outside also not getting murdered. And then the Luppy crew makes a circle to use more power. And the Doctor admits, yeah, I was a greedy piece of shit. This is my fault. Also realizing who the fuck the guy is. He's like, oh shit, you're my Time Lord friend, bro, dude. Also, the Abbott is a fake projection of this dude, sort of, but also it's him. Also, meanwhile getting Yates at this exact moment. The spiders are sending down power to their family, and Luppy is like, what the fuck? And then he has a moment of a nap before telling the doctor he knows what to do already. And he's like, no, I don't want to, I'm scared. And he's like, well, then do it. And the Luppy crew have powered up and finally kind of killed Tommy, but actually Yates takes the shot and I guess maybe is dead. But the doctor is teleported away over to the TARDIS. Also, the old guy gets killed. Swoop off, and the retro cavemen just kind of drag him straight to the Spider Council. And the doctor's like, I'm just gonna give it to the Great One. Like, and they're like, oh my god, Great One. And he's like, all right, bye.
That's pretty great.
Luppy gets angry that the spiders are all superstitious and shit, and he says the spider word. He gets himself killed because they don't like that, which is fucking hilarious. Which is fucking hilarious for an episode that has yellowface, can I just mention? But he turns it. Am I wrong?
I mean, no, I guess not.
But he turns to him and he's like, he's now regenerated, of course, and he's like, I'm young now. And then the doctor has made it to the cave and he's like, just make fucking peace. And he's like, no. And she really wants to finish the crystal web above her head so she can learn all the things. And he's like, no, it's a feedback loop. You're just going to kill yourself. And she's just like, nah, takes the crystal, sticks it in, and then just dies. Freeing everybody, freeing the crew. Sarah's sad about the doctor having died, apparently, because it's been 3 weeks now. They talk about regenerating, of course, and then too bad when he walks out from the TARDIS, he just dies and doesn't regenerate. And they have an extremely fucking emotional moment before he actually fucking dies. And then the Abbott dude shows up and he's like, hey, what's up? He's not dead. He's gonna regenerate. Bye! And then he force starts the regeneration and disappears. And then, oh god, here we go again. There, he's regenerating. That's it. That's all there is.
Goodbye, John Pertwee. Hello, Tom Baker.
Mm-hmm.
The one doctor that everyone basic bitches say is their favorite. No, Tom Baker is really, 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 really good. There are specific reasons why, and we'll get into them when we talk about his episodes. But I want to ask you 2 questions, dear.
Huh.
One, how'd you like the episode?
Like a 6, I guess. I didn't dislike
if it was edited down to like a 4 episode, like you cut out the chase scene, you make it shorter, you cut out
a 4 episode.
Episode 6.
There's no reason why it
could have been,
this
and
long.
it should have been.
But yeah, like I don't know, I was kind of bored by it, but at the same time, like I didn't hate it, but it wasn't great.
Yeah, it has its moments, but yeah, there are parts of it where it's just like, this is being held back from being a really, really good episode right now.
Mm-hmm.
So second question that I kind of want to ask you, now that we've watched all of the Third Doctor's episodes, what do you think of him and his era?
I actually find him really annoying as a doctor because he's so childish. If I'm honest.
He is very childish, but it's the kind of childish where they don't challenge it or make fun of it or like have problems happen because of it. It's more just like, oh, boys will be boys kind of thing. And it's like, come on, you could do something really good here. Like you could have like companions have more agency. Or be more involved in the story by like, hey, he's too childish to do something, or listen to the companion, so the companion just does it themselves and actually does it instead of, the doctor doesn't listen, so the companion, because he's being childish, so the companion goes and tries to do the thing by themselves, and they get trapped and need help by the doctor. The doctor comes and tells them off for doing it by themselves, but haha, it's okay. I should have listened to you. It's like, yeah, you should have fucking listened. Like, that's actually my big gripe with the Third Doctor as well. It's like, I like him, but they could have done so much more with like his childish nature, but they just accept it. And it's like, no, you could. There are moments where they called out him being childish, and it's great, but then they don't follow through with it, and it's like, come on. Lazy. But yeah, I'd ask you the same of the first and second Doctor, but we haven't watched all of them yet, and I kind of want you to look at them after we've looked at other Doctors as well. Which we're gonna go back to the first and second Doctor because there's more episodes that are gonna be released because they're being reanimated.
It is amusing how long you think we'll do this podcast for. Anyway, I mean, like, the first Doctor, he's not bad. He's kind of annoying sometimes with how easily he gets, like, well, no, I want to do it this way. I'm a grumpy old man. It's like, fuck you.
The sort of, like,
you're just my dad. Fuck off.
Stoic. Yeah,
no,
the sort
he's
of
just
the
my
time
dad.
Stoic patriarch of... No, it's that sort of the stoic, stubborn patriarch, and it's like, well, you have to do what he says. He's in charge. He's the man in charge. It's that sort of era, which, yeah, is, again, frustrating, and Doctor Who has had a chance to confront that in parts where they've included the first Doctor outside of his era, and they don't. They instead go, oh, he was a misogynistic piece of shit, and it's like, he had elements of misogyny to him, but he wasn't, like, he it wasn't of his nature as a character to be like, women are a second class. It was of his nature to have the time elements of, it is a woman's job to do this, it is a man's job to do this, and there are elements within his episodes where they call that out. Like, there are times when, like, there is a specific episode that we haven't even gotten to yet, which is an episode I desperately want them to recreate, called Galaxy 4, where there is essentially a task force of deadly women, essentially, and it's kind of a you could argue it's a women's rights group type deal.
Anyway,
it's great, but Planet of the Spiders, it's a decent episode. It's got some stuff in it.
I was gonna say really fast, just to also add to that, because I was talking about the first and second Doctor. I like the second Doctor, but he comes off as an actual idiot sometimes, and I don't know how I feel about that.
Yes, he does come across as an idiot sometimes, which is unfortunate, because it's like, you could do something with that. You could have, like, the kind of character that is acting stupid but is really in control, which I think future Doctors actually are like.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was thinking back to him. The thing that annoyed me extremely is, like, it's the first or second episode after he regened, and he was just sitting there playing the fucking recorder, not saying a goddamn word throughout the entire beginning of the episode to them, and they're, like, asking him questions and asking for help, and he was just like, it's just like, you're just an asshole at that point.
Well, that was just, you know, lingering bits of the first Doctor staying. But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, the future iterations of the Doctor play off that sort of acting dumb, or, you know, sort of acting unaware, but really they're in control, or really they are sort of just intentionally kind of putting off an air of unintelligence because it intentionally puts people off. The fourth Doctor especially is good at that, and he has a lot of great bits with that sort of thing.
Great.
But
spiders.
So spiders, don't like them. Spiders as an episode, don't mind it.
I don't like it, but I don't mind it.
Yeah. Next episode, nice and simple. Robot.
Is that seriously just its title?
Robot. That's it. It's robot. Not the robot. Not a robot. Just robot. It's good. It's gonna be fun. We're gonna find a robot.
Mm-hmm.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.